In this episode you are going to learn how you can make a map with TrenchBroom for BFG. You are going to learn the basics of how to edit brushes, making new rooms and corridors, adding entities like monsters and weapons, and after watching this video, you have an idea how easy level design can be.
Before we jump right into the first tutorial, let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Beckebans, aka Takeshi from the ep.1 Discord. I love graphics programming and art in general, and I have been working as a graphics engineer and technical director in Germany for many years. I started with TrenchBroom Modding in 1999, and I want to share my knowledge about the Doom 3 technology and, to be more precise, about my source port RBDOOM-3-BFG. I got many requests regarding my source port, like setting up TrenchBroom, creating PBR materials, how to work with the new global Illumination system, or even basics like compiling the engine from the source on GitHub. Doom 3 is a half-life of the Doom series and is still one of my favorite games, and I especially like about it that it's open source and you can change every aspect of the game. You can already find much information on the web how to make new games with Unreal 4 or Unity. However, it would be sad if people only knew how to work with these big players. Doom 3-BFG's engine is a lean and mean technology with a small memory footprint, and I want to demonstrate in this series that you can make amazing stuff with this little engine. First, we need to make a solid foundation, and that means we need to learn how to make maps for Doom 3. This is how I started with Quake 3. But later on we go deeper into the technology. You're going to learn how to get new content into the engine using new workflows with the customized TrenchBroom editor and Blender. If you like this video, then drop a like or leave a comment. You can also ask questions in the ep.1 Discord, where we have a community that can also provide feedback. So that you don't have to endure my Schwarzenegger English any longer, I'll hand over the rest of the presentation to my AI assistant, Chappie.
Hey Robert, thank you very much, it's an honor for me. Let's get started. We always create a new folder first. In this example here, it's here under C, Projects Doom Dev. We create this folder so that we can do everything for the modding without destroying our original game. I'll put it in the base folder here, I'll copy it over from the Steam version. You can also use the GOG version. Then you still need to download the new version of RBDOOM-3-BFG from ModDB or GitHub. You can also find the latest version in the id-Tech4 Discord RBDOOM-3-BFG's channel. We are now extracting it over our Doom Dev folder. Version 1.3 is the full release, and the latest patch is 1.4. You can also find it in the video description below. And overwrite that. Before we can start TrenchBroom for the first time, we have to go into the engine and run a command. You open the console with the tilde key under escape. There you then give and export images for TrenchBroom. The warning that takes about 2 to 3 minutes. You have to go through it once. And then you've actually done it. That's already the largest part of the installation. One more note. Before you run the command you should switch to windowed mode, because if you run this command in full screen it may take a lot longer because of the VSync and prints in the console. So when that's done, just get out there. But quit her via the menu. As a next step we start TrenchBroom. We can find it under Doom Dev Tools TrenchBroom. First we go to New Map, open Preferences. There we have to say where the program finds the development folder. This is necessary so that it can then load the textures accordingly. If we go further, we have the choice between the Doom 3 valve and the normal Doom 3 format for the map format. I programmed it purely so that the Doom 3 format can also be read. But Doom 3 valve is that where that's preferred. And what the editor can only write, and you should basically only work with it. Then we'll get an overview of what we see here in the editor at all. So we have a completely normal menu bar up here. Here we have a toolbar with the individual tools for editing. Brushes mainly. We can also set the grid size here. I'll come back to that later. There is a main 3D view here. There are the view options here, with which you can turn things on and off that you may not want to see here. On the right side there is the inspector, which is divided into 3 tabs. So actually there are 3 inspectors and there is another info bar. The console prints down here, but what is actually much more important for mappers, what is really good and what I got almost. After a year I overlooked the issues bar here, with which you can quickly find errors in the map and fix them. So we have the entity inspector there, you get an overview of all entities that are in Doom 3. That's already in the slimmed down version, there are a lot more than in Quake. And the command we just executed has now also ensured that we not only see the models here, but also the textures can and should be seen there. You just take the time to look through it soon because it's actually quite exciting what you can then simply pull over here in the level here with drag and drop. Then there is the face inspector, which is actually the texture browser, so you can somehow select textures. For example, you can create collections, you have to define them as material files in Doom 3, then they are visible here. TrenchBroom is a bit unlike other level editors. These textures are not all made available from the start, you really have to explicitly select them under texture collections down here. Here, for example, textures base store can also be used here. You can also group these, and they are now a bit small. We can change that again, we go to preferences view and can also set here that we want this to be larger. We go to 250 here, then they can be seen much better. Originally, this level editor is intended for Quake and Quake comes with very dark textures. That's why TrenchBroom is automatically provided with an overbright value in terms of brightness so that it is compensated. But we don't want that in Doom 3 now. That's why we're turning this down to 10 here. Of course you can also set other things such as field of view. Let's leave that as standard for now. If you see such weird red tile textures here, don't be surprised that there are materials that are still present in Doom 3 in the material definition, but that have no textures in the shipped version for the Doom 3 BFG edition. Just ignore them. The next point we do is the navigation. Of course we have to somehow learn how to move in this 3D program. If we hold the right mouse button and move the mouse, we can rotate the camera. If we also press WASD we can move accordingly, like in a shooter. With the middle mouse button, with the middle mouse wheel you can zoom in and out accordingly. If you hold the right mouse button and then fly around and, for example, now turn the mouse wheel up, I can now fly faster with it. But if I turn it down again, I can fly slower again. This allows you to set the camera speed. You can select an object with the left mouse button. If an object is selected and you hold Alt and then also hold the right mouse button and move the mouse, then you can move orbitally around an object. You can use escape to deselect an object again. Now we are in a 3D view all the time. But you can also switch to a classic 2D view by pressing the spacebar. Once pressed we are in the top view, then in the side view, I think again in the front view. I rarely use the last two dot if you want it to be more classic, like in Hammer. You can go to preferences view again and then under layout 4 panes, for example. Here you have the possibility to navigate between all viewports independently. You can also hold the middle mouse button here, for example in the 2D view you can zoom in and out. The 3D view is relatively independent of this. If you then press Ctrl plus space, you can also maximize the view you are currently active in. Ctrl plus space again and back again. I'm turning this off now because I don't usually use this view. With Ctrl plus 1, 2 or 3 you can change the inspector respectively. So with Ctrl plus 1 you are in Map Inspector. It's relatively unexciting for us right now. Ctrl plus 2 Entity Inspector, Ctrl plus 3 Texture Browser. If you want more space here for the 3D view or the 2D views, You can also do this by pressing Ctrl+4 to remove the infobar. And Ctrl+5 for the entity inspector. You can even undo Ctrl+4 and Ctrl+5 again. Before we can start building our first level, I have to give you a short introduction to what brushes are and how to manipulate them using the tools provided here. When you start TrenchBroom, it is similar to Blender, which by default exists here. Like the Blender default cube, there is a default brush. A brush is basically a mesh like in Blender, only it is restricted. So instead of that, it's akin to malleable. It's defined by a couple of planes, so we have a plane in front here, up here, behind, down here, and these planes intersect, and so they actually then define the shape of this object. This also means that this object cannot be concave but is always convex. If we wanted to have a dent here or edge that would have to be cut out, then we have to split it up here or somehow take care of it. There are definitely several brushes then. A brush alone can only ever be convex. It can't do more, and that's something you just have to take into account. With the left mouse button, we can select a brush. With escape we can deselect. With escape we can get out of any. Once we have selected a brush, we can move it by simply holding and dragging it with the left mouse button. That is always on the Z plane. If we hold Alt with it, we can do the same on the Z level as well. If we haven't selected a brush, then we're in brush creation mode. This means that if I now hold the left mouse button and simply move somewhere here, a brush is automatically created. You can select multiple brushes by holding Ctrl and pressing the left mouse button. Actually, pretty much the most important operation is to select a brush and then use Shift to select an area and then change its size. It's absolutely basic, but it's really something that really makes editing brushes very fast without having to select a tool in any way specifically for it. When we create a new brush, it will be created where here the mouse also has contact with a geometry. I can also remove this brush again by pressing the delete button. You can duplicate brushes in place with Ctrl+D. If you copy a brush with Ctrl+C, you can also copy it to another place where the mouse is pointing. If you have two brushes selected, you can merge them. With Ctrl+J, Ctrl+J can also be used to create beautiful, interesting geometries very quickly. If we press C, we get the clip tool, and there we can select 2 points and use it to define a cutting plane to cut a brush. With Ctrl+Enter we can choose which half we want to keep or possibly even want to keep both halves. In this case I just take both. The indirect light that you can see is built directly into. Then I pull them apart. Now we have two brushes here. With T you get to the scaling tool. This can be used to scale a brush. Similar to Blender, there is vertex selection, edge selection, and face selection. However, these are not on 1, 2, 3, but on V, E and F. So we have F for face selection. Here you have to note that if you select a face, it will be moved on the Z plane if you now hold the mouse, and you can use Alt to move it again on the Z level. With E we get into the edge selection mode. Then we can also move individual edges accordingly, and with V we get into the vertex editing mode. And it can quickly happen that it just snaps together. Quickly very extensive, and, for example, the vertex tool also works with several brushes at the same time so that you can also use it to deform terrain. Then there's the rotation tool, R. This can be used to rotate a brush, but it will only rotates the planes. If we now have a monster here and we just place it on it, Then you can also rotate it with it, but then it will be rotated differently and the corresponding property will be entered here for the entity, where it will then be saved. If you press B, you can create complex brushes. These can be recorded on the ground. For example, like this. You hold Shift, you can then extrude upwards with the left mouse button and then confirm with Enter. There is one useful little tip left, namely we can not only move differently here with the mouse, but also with the cursor keys, and that's pretty intuitive in 3D. For example, if we are aligned like this in 3D and I press the cursor key up or the arrow key, the brush moves accordingly in this direction. To the left, to the right, to the back. But with page up, page down you can move the brush accordingly. TrenchBroom comes with a very good manual and you can read it by pressing F1. There you will also find an overview of all these shortcuts that I just mentioned, and you still have a good reference work if you have forgotten anything, and you don't have to search hard. It's really small and clear. And above all, it really comes with a few nice animations. We have now learned everything to create our first room. We now take our default brush and I change the grid size to 8. So that I can move it a bit better, and I want to align it to the grid here. I can now go to the 2D view here again. So there, I want it in here underneath. Thought it will be helpful later so that the textures are all nicely aligned here. But we'll take care of the shape first. I change the grid size to 16 again with 5 on the keyboard, and I want to have a floor of 512 by 512. Then I can duplicate it, Ctrl+D. And we tilt the thing up with Alt+ cursor. With Alt+ left mouse button I bring it back up here. With Shift+ left mouse button I reduce the height to 256. Well, I think that's not bad. So then we duplicate the Ctrl+D. Bring it over here, duplicate it again, Alt+ cursor key. I'll just duplicate the floor again now and bring it up with Pajup. So welcome to our first 4 walls. Now we need an entity, info player start, so that the level can be loaded by the engine. Let's take a look at that here. We don't even care about the texturing for now. We save this. Base.maps, we create a new folder and we name this after Episode 1, first episode. The room is solid or waterproof. This is something you have to take into account, otherwise the engine will have a real problem compiling the level. If you just test it now. Unlike Quake, Doom 3 has the map compiler built directly into the engine. This is not only the BSP compiler, but also the area awareness compiler, which is executed at the same time. This is for the collision detection for the AI. You simply compile the level with map tutorials ep.1.map. Tab completion also works here in the console. And has it compiled. You can start a custom map with map or with Dmap. And we see the first room. We didn't place a light. It's not a problem now. The engine has a default ambient light for this. But basically we have a room that works, we can walk around. The texturing is all a bit strange, but it doesn't matter at all, it's about the geometry for now. Most tutorials mostly end here and maybe have a light in there. But that's not good enough for me today. I want to teach you how to learn how to build a small level in half an hour, which is fun. So let's go straight ahead. We create a brush. That should serve as a walkthrough. Otherwise we'll select everything here with a double click and we'll do duplicate, Ctrl+D here. We'll get that across with the arrow keys. How far doesn't really matter. We'll leave that out for now, and what we can do is I want to create a passage between these two. I'll make a helper brush for this, pull this through completely. Below. We do this here that it is appropriate there on it. And what I can do here is appropriate, I can basically put a blanket on it. I'll show you what I'm actually planning to do here in a moment. So we'll duplicate this. Pulling over here again, and we need a finish down there on the floor. And not quite that far. Okay, now let's take this brush. That's another little special feature. We can also do Boolean operations here, similar to Blender. For that we go here under the CSG, that's for constructive solid geometry, subtract. Then this brush disappears. We have now created a passage accordingly here. Around it are the brushes that I just created, and we have automatically divided this wall here. We don't need the second info player start. So we save the map again with Ctrl+S and go back to the engine. You don't always have to re-enter everything, you can also just use the cursor keys in the engine, then you go through the history of the console commands. We compile again. No errors as it stands. We're reloading the world, we've got a passageway. So that you can see the ambient light a bit better, I can also do R-Force Ambient 1. It's okay. Out again. I didn't create this passage just to show you something, but instead that we have two rooms forming the gamma play here and create a bit of excitement here. I want to place a monster here that runs towards you, and we don't have enough power, not enough ammo, or should it come across as a bit Doom 3 like, then we're supposed to flee through this tunnel and stock up on ammunition accordingly, or take a shotgun or something like that and then just fight the monster. We'll rotate the player. Again with R. And we can texture this a little bit, make it a little prettier so that it looks a little more like Doom 3. To do this, we go to the face tool and I'll search for Enwell. I like the textures of NPro quite well. Now the ones from the rotation might not be what I want them to be. Then you can reset texture alignment here. That's actually one of the best features ever here with brush workflow. So in Blender I hate UV mapping that's really blatant. It's always really work intensive and here everything goes extremely fast and the Enwell textures there, for example, you quickly have a few things that you can use that don't look bad at all, and here, for example, I'm going to do a little bit of one make combination. We have something here then we can now use all that we just learned. I take the clipping tool, make 2 points. I want to have both brushes. I can only ever put one material on a brush. And we'll do that now for this outside, it doesn't matter at all. And I would like to have a bit of a series here, for example. No, that's what I'm doing above, it's going to look a bit strange now, but. Then I can do it again, I'll just take our clipping brush again. 2 points cut through. Then I can flip this brush here. From the texture here like this dot I could also flip the brush's geometry, but we're not going to do that now and then like this and escape. That's not bad at all. We could do that up here too. Up here we're going to do something a little different. I can, for example, select 2 brushes and use the clipping tool. Now they're both cut nicely in the middle. We have the option here with Shift plus left mouse button not to select a brush, but the face, and then we can simply copy all the texture information over to another face. With Alt plus left mouse button. And we remove this wall here again and the other 3. We duplicate them and drag them over here. So that it looks similar to the one on the one hand. Behind that, maybe we'll do something else. Just reset. What do we use for the floor? That doesn't look too bad from texture alignment again. Let's take something back there and maybe something like this for the ceiling. Something brighter. Here on the side I'm lazy, I don't care. Just have to go quickly now. We could do the same here. And also select several faces instead of the brushes with Shift plus left mouse button. Yes is a face. With Ctrl plus Shift plus left mouse button there are several faces. We select that, then we want it on there and on there. We select that, we want to have it on here. It's that quick. From behind the ceiling, but maybe try a different design. But the rooms are a bit different, so maybe the problems are expecting a bit different. Looks a bit technically alien but might work. Just try it. So we select several brushes again. And clip them all at once with the cutting plane here. Then we select the brush. Reset this once here. Okay, we don't want that on the side. We drag that back over here. Then we select this wall here and say we want to have that here for the others too. And up here we might just do the other texture. That's next to it. We reset that too. That might look a bit weird. Now we can see if we want it to be a bit uniform. And don't want to keep looking for the textures that we've already used. We can click on Used, Yes, and then we'll have an overview of all the textures in the level that we have already used, and thus quickly find the texture or the material that we used on the ceiling. Save again, we're still in the engine here. We'll recompile this. It's taking shape. So now I would like to somehow have structure like that. Now I'll pull this over here. Then there should be a monster on it that will greet us right at the beginning. But for this, another texture for the top and bottom. That's maybe not that bad. And I would like to have a support structure here somehow. Sort of like two pillars. Then we'll take something here 32 by 32, pull it up to the ceiling. We'll duplicate that and push that over here. Now let's go into the entities and let's search for monster. And who do we use to make stress? The chainsaw guy. And maybe we should put a light in the room so it doesn't look so dark. I changed to top view again to make it a bit more central. Such a light here, I'll duplicate that over to the other room. I always find lights without a source to be very bad in terms of immersion. So I would try something else here. Then let's look for swing and then just look for lamp models that use the light as an emitter. And then take something with a size or height of 128. And let's rotate the object here. Then we duplicate the swing light. We'll just try it again. Everything compiled fine. The monster sees me, but it doesn't reach me. The light still looks a bit strange. Okay, R-Force Ambient 0.5, that's the standard value in the engine. The light here is floating, by the way. We need to fix that. This doesn't fit so well. Then it could be that the map compiler is bitching around here because then the level won't compile anymore. Because an entity is outside of the solid level. Not so bad in this case because there's a trick for. We can go into the properties here and offload one enter. We save the level again. So now we don't have the error anymore. It looks pretty good. The lamp here doesn't look bad either. Now the monster has trouble getting over here somehow. That's why I'm going to do a clip brush here for the monster. So that something somehow has some leeway on which it can climb down here because it's probably just calculated now so that it couldn't do that. There are these special textures or materials for that called textures common. Now let's take a monster clip here. This is really a hack. He's supposed to jump down here, run towards us, and we're supposed to panic a little bit here. Clean the console once with the clear CMD. It's compiling. We're going in.
Oh, ich schaff das. Hilfe, Panik.
Trying a bit to do it that way, but not well, so let's get out of here. So we have to stock up our player a bit. The player should have a goal here where he runs to. And where we can get the ammunition, but we can. We're looking for weapon shotgun and the player doesn't really need ammo either, actually, but we just do it like this to make it look a bit more complete. Ammo shell would be that's already appropriate. Usually here in Doom 3 it's also the case that these objects just don't just lie around in the level somehow, but somehow it always has to make sense and purpose that you place it somewhere on it, that it somehow lies on a table or a. For example, in this case a diamond box. Let's take that, then we'll place this box here and the things on top of it so that it makes more sense. And maybe rotate it a bit so that it doesn't look so boring. Some decorative objects. Let's do an exploding barrel here. You can also try it out. Maybe we'll make a few more of them. We can try to lure him here somehow, and then it will explode. Now we haven't changed anything about the geometries or brushwork in the level, so we don't even need to recompile the level. But then you can just reload it with map or Dmap. Okay, things are floating here. Is not that ideal. But it's better. Well, the timing was shit. A few of the barrels weren't visible here. That's because maybe they just fell through the floor here, so we just select them again and push them up a bit and try to place the items a little more precisely here. I make the grid a bit finer to 8. Yes, which I would also like. If this one dies, another imp demon will appear here who will also follow us so that we can just go a little further and not just have only one enemy to fight against. So let's just look for the monster imp. Monster demon imp, which we place directly here as well. Let's give it the property that it's not there from the start. It's also very easy to do by saying that this one only comes in when it's Triggered somehow and then it's beamed in or teleported in. Let's do teleport 1. And give it a name because we want to create a connection here between these two, and if this one dies then he should trigger the other one to spawn into the level. So that means we give it a unique name. And we call it ep.1. And then we select the ugly chainsaw guy here and we say there is a target ep.1. You can see that directly. There is an arrow connection here. We save it again. Okay,
Okay,
here
now
comes
comes.
panic.
Panic.
Did not work, okay. And the other one comes, but now we have an even stronger weapon here. Maybe one imp is a little like too easy. Doesn't matter, it works. The lamp is also wobbling. You could do some deco objects now. Just have a look through. I can actually only recommend. Take some time to explore the entities. Just try it around here, maybe a few more boxes. Yeah, so we're assuming that it's kind of a room here, maybe that's kind of like cargo-wise, and we'll kind of like in Half-Life, just kind of have some stuff there. Which we can also do here. For example, we can also still put some things here. So that was a little bit higher. We could also try that we shoot against the barrels. Well, we're running out of here, so that then this starts to burn, and when the monster runs along, that we'll then catch that one with this. So we'll put a couple more of these here. And then maybe we'll do something around that so that yes, kind of here. People are supposed to avoid this area. Yes, maybe. Let's save that again and load that again. Let's take the gun. And there, from the timing, that didn't work. Looks a bit funny. The imp is there, it works. Alright, so that's got some gamma play. Now we can do a quick reset. And correct the light a bit. I'm going to give the kill monsters in the console. Now the monsters are gone and we can adjust the light here. A little bit correct, that is now a little bit yellow stingy. This is a bit special concerning RBDOOM. So in Doom 3 you would have here R-Force Ambient, 0. That would be the light we actually have in vanilla Doom. The indirect light that you can see is built directly into the engine. It's sort of an default ambient cube. I'm going to add to that another video, but so that you have an idea of how to achieve a coherent light in this engine. You just need one environment probe per room. It's called Env probe. That's new. This is not included in the normal Doom 3's could sit barriers. So roughly you understand the thing again once still the tone on. Maybe another. So is a slightly longer tunnel I made here. Okay, we'll save this again. Important cheats here are also God for God mode. Then he can go fuck himself. I don't care about anything. Kill monsters and he's gone. Then we can do some more work in peace. If you compile the map with map, this one just does a BSP phase as far as map compiling goes. In Quake you usually still have visibility phase and a light mapping phase. This Doom engine has no light maps, but something similar. It is a light grid or irradiance field, and you can also visualize it for debugging. You have to bind that once with exec. Execute, once. Exec devtools.cfg. Now I show you that here also in the console. If we press F1 now, for example, we can look at the environment probes. If we press that multiple times then we get that back to 0. Then we don't see that anymore, and with F6 we see here the light grid. This is similar to Quake 3, but now this is not initialized, so these are. Now here are these beads that just all have the same color. Now let's get rid of that and we can calculate these things. Let's type in bake environment probes. That can take about a minute. So now we have cubemaps calculated here for each of these individual points in HDR, and we have them convolved so that we can use that here for PBR lighting. That way we can have relatively good specular reflections. That also helps us here to fix these complete wrong lighting conditions here for specular lighting. And that's where we do another command. Bake light grids bounce2. This calculates the light grid with some kind of 3D light map for the diffuse lighting using spherical harmonics. It's an irradiance volume and actually quite an advanced technique. So with that, we have it pretty much complete. Loading the level again. Is there no way to hide here?
Nicht gut. Ja. Was ist los?
That's it for now for the first episode. If this was useful for you then just drop a like and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episodes, and otherwise I would say, see you in the next tutorial.